Hello there wrestling fans, the Big Daddy D is here. Well, WrestleMania 29 has now been and gone, along with the Monday Night Raw that followed 24 hours later. But overall, was this year's showcase of the Immortals any good? Well, WrestleMania 29 promised a lot in terms of lineup and star power, but despite a couple of excellent matches, the show ended up falling below expectations. Before the show could kick off, we had a pre-Mania bout pitting Blighty's own Wade Barrett against The Miz for the Intercontinental title. The two of them countered each other's finishes a few times before Miz locked on the figure 4, which he botched again, to secure the win and the IC belt. However, this match just shows how much Miz has gone down in popularity when you consider that he was main eventing WrestleMania for the WWE title only 2 years ago. Now he's not even part of the main show, he's in the curtain jerker for the IC belt. A belt that he wins and loses again to Barrett 24 hours later on Raw. So, what was the bloody point of that? This also highlights that the US title is meaningless. No match for Antonio Cesaro. Maybe these two belts need to be unified. So anyway, the show opened up properly with the Shield taking on the trio of Randy Orton, Sheamus and The Big Show. During the match, Sheamus and Show started ripping off Ambrose's and Rollins' clothing, which is a bit worrying really. Rollins took a hard dive from the ring to the outside. I'm surprised he didn't knock himself out on the barricade, to be honest. The Shield then triple teamed Sheamus and went to give him the triple powerbomb, but Show made the save with a massive spear to everyone. Show was then itching to get back in the ring, but Orton stole the tag off him. That scoundrel! Show then gets pissed off and just watches on the apron as Orton nails Rollins with an RKO, but then eats an enormous spear off Reigns and gets pinned. Orton confronts Show after the match, but Big Show just clobbers both him and Sheamus. So it looks like the rumoured Orton heel turn's not going to happen tonight then. Although Big Show has now turned heel again for the upteenth time. I wish this guy would make up his bloody mind. The Shield came out of this match looking really strong, and if they weren't made as a collective unit before, they definitely are now. I believe in the Shield! But I reckon they'll all be established as singles wrestlers by the time WrestleMania 30 comes around. Next up we got the Battle of the Behemoths as Ryback takes on Mark Emery. I can imagine that if the late great Gorilla Monsoon had been calling the action, then he would have mentioned something like an irresistible force meeting an immovable object. Or something like that anyway. As expected, this was a rather slow-paced match, but it was funny hearing the crowd chanting for sexual chocolate. Better be careful with that one. Ryback might take that chant literally and end up eating Henry. Nom 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 nom, feed me more! Anyway, Ryback actually managed to lift up Henry for a shell shock, but Henry grabbed the top rope and ended up crashing down on Ryback with all his weight and pinning him. Yes, he fell on him to win the match. I have to admit that I was a little surprised to see Ryback losing again, especially when WWE had him making an apparent heel turn and attacking Cena 24 hours later on Raw. But the hungry hippo still gets his WrestleMania moment after the match when he manages to shell shock Henry on a second attempt. Now that was very impressive. Next up, Team Hell No was successful in defending their tag team titles against Dolph Ziggler and Big E Langston. What was good to see was that Ziggler kissed AJ before the match and then turned around into a big boot to the face from Bryan. Ziggler almost lost the same way Bryan did at last year's Mania. Plus, after this match, Daniel Bryan got a great WrestleMania moment as the Yes chants returned, with 80,000 people joining in with him. Next up, Chris Jericho tried his hardest to get a decent match out of Fandango, but appeared to be wrestling himself half the time. Great sign spotted in the crowd during the match. If Fandango actually wrestles, we riot. Fandango picked up a debut win, although quite frankly it's worrying that even a master like Chris Jericho could only get an average at best match out of him. Instead of this, Jericho should have been pitted against Antonio Cesaro for the US title, or he could have been added to the Miz vs Barrett match and made it part of the main show. P. Diddy came out next, so at that point it was time for a piss break. Next up, Alberto Del Rio, accompanied by Hispanic Eddie Munster lookalike, versus Jack Swagger, accompanied by a racist Yosemite Sam, who went off on a rant about immigrants, which I won't repeat here. WWE are really playing this gimmick seriously close to the knuckle, which isn't good considering that they're meant to be PG friendly these days. Also, with WWE spearheading an anti-bullying campaign, there is no way they'd book a xenophobic, racist bully to be their world champion. So it's obvious that Swagger wasn't going to win this match, and that was before he got arrested for driving under the influence recently. Also, Del Rio has been pushed into the position of WWE's #1 Mexican babyface, seeing as Rey Mysterio has still been troubled with knee problems, and Sin Cara hasn't exactly been the Mysterio replacement they were hoping for, not to mention that he's pretty injury prone himself. It's weird seeing Del Rio suddenly becoming the good guy, as not too long ago he was the vile millionaire heel character. It's like as if the $1 Million Man Ted DiBiase or JBL suddenly decided, "Hey everyone, I'm a good guy now." Anyway, Del Rio retains the title in a decent match, but not exactly one that seemed WrestleMania worthy to me. Yeah, Cena Sam was pissed off too, but he was nowhere near as pissed off as the crowd got once it was obvious that Ziggler wouldn't be cashing in his Money in the Bank title shot at Mania. Okay, so he did it 24 hours later on Raw, but why couldn't he have done it here? What a WrestleMania moment that would have been. Match of the night, without question, was CM Punk versus The Undertaker. Taker's entrance was as spectacular as always, but CM Punk's was just as good, with Living Colour performing Cult of Personality live as he came out. Nice touch as well was that Punk was wearing the same colour scheme ring attire that Taker had on his debut, purple and grey. He even went for the old school rope walk during the match too. Although even the most devoted CM Punk fan knew that Taker was going to win, the two of them still grabbed the crowd's attention for the entire duration of the match, unlike any other bout on the card. One particularly cringe-worthy moment was when Punk hit the Macho Man elbow drop from the top turnbuckle onto Taker while he was on the commentator's table, and the table didn't even budge. That looked bloody painful, and the replay made it look even worse. Back in the ring, Taker locked in Hell's Gate, only for Punk to roll over and counter into a near fall before locking in the Anaconda Vice. Then Taker just sat right up and stared Punk straight in the eyes. Yikes! Taker hit a tombstone piledriver, but Punk kicked out. The crowd, and myself to be honest, went absolutely bonkers at this point. Punk also clobbered Taker with the urn during an attempted last ride. The finish came with both men countering each other's moves several times before Taker managed to hit Punk with a second tombstone for the pin. 21-0, an incredible match. You might complain that Taker only puts on one match per year these days, but that one match usually ends up being the match of the year. So, the streak continues. In a perfect world, this match would have gone on last, as the crowd were exhausted after this. WWE haven't really learnt the lesson from last year, as you can't really follow on from a Taker match at WrestleMania. As a result of this, Triple H vs Brock Lesnar was most notable for the sheer lack of response from the crowd. It wasn't until the last 5 minutes that the audience really got into this match. Also, the entrance for Triple H was bizarre. Why did he come out of Castle Grayskull with a load of cocaine all over his stomach? Still, at least Brock Lesnar got a WrestleMania moment to make up for that last one where he nearly killed himself with a botched shooting star press. And that WrestleMania moment is this. Yeah, thanks WWE. I wasn't planning on sleeping afterwards anyway. Howard Finkel then brings out the Hall of Fame class of 2003. Congrats to all! Mick Foley, Booker T, Trish Stratus, Bob Backlund, Bruno Sammartino, except for Donald fecking Trump. Seriously, why is he here? He got a chorus of boos, and justifiably so. Oh, and it looks as if the 8-person tag team match between Brodus Clay, Tensai, and the Funkadactyls versus Rhodes Scholars and the Bella Twins has been cancelled. Oh well, not that I'm complaining or anything. So finally, we had Cena versus Rock 2. Last year, this encounter had never been seen before, so it was intriguing to see what would happen. But this year, it was obvious that Cena was going to get his win back and the title along with it. The outcome of the match is going to be so predictable that they may as well not bother having the match at all. Unless of course WWE does something to surprise us like, oh I don't know, turn Cena heel? Nah. The crowd were not all that much hotter for this match than they were for Lesnar vs Triple H. Although Rock got a few cheers, it does show, like his previous matches, that The Rock has a real job trying to keep pace with WWE's full-time headliners, and it felt too similar to last year's match, only this time with the result reversed. These guys only have about 5 moves each, and to make it even more obvious, they started stealing each other's moves. Indeed, a good half of the match was spent trading rock bombs and attitude adjustments with each other. False finishes are good in wrestling, but Jesus, they didn't half overuse them here. At the end, Cena gets his win and the title back, and he and Rock share a handshake afterwards, which was a nice touch. But then when Rock walked off and left Cena on his own, the boos from the crowd were literally bringing the house down. Seriously, WWE, turn this guy heel, will ya? There were a lot of story points leading to WrestleMania that were teased to us but never delivered upon. Orton didn't turn heel, Cena didn't turn heel either. Ziggler didn't cash in his Money in the Bank contract, only doing it 24 hours later on Raw. Kane and Daniel Bryan didn't split up during their tag team match. These are all story points that could have made some great WrestleMania moments, but we didn't get them. Also, it's funny how they had time for a P. Diddy concert, but Miz vs Barrett was shoved into the pre-show match, and the Tongues of Funk vs Rhodes Scholars match was cancelled altogether. Yet the show still finished about 10 to 15 minutes early. I feel a wee bit cheated here. Ultimately, if you didn't see WrestleMania, then you really need to watch Punk vs Undertaker. But aside from that, the show lacked any real spark. Still, WrestleMania 30 ought to be good. WrestleMania 29 gets a 3 out of 5 from the Big Daddy D.